In a remote stretch of the American Northwest, far from the noise of industrial machines and high-tech mining operations, a group of miners is quietly pulling nearly $2 million in gold every single month, using nothing but wooden sieves and sheer determination. The creek they work in looks like any other, muddy, shallow, and littered with fallen branches and leaves, but beneath its surface lies a hidden fortune. These miners, many of whom are third or even fourth-generation gold hunters, have inherited more than just tradition. They've mastered the art of slow, deliberate extraction, using a process that most modern prospectors would consider obsolete. Yet it works. And it works at a scale that few can believe until they see the glittering results at the end of the day. Each morning begins the same way. Just after sunrise, the miners gather at the banks of the creek, carrying nothing more than wooden pans, buckets, and long-handled shovels. There's no diesel rumble or mechanical clatter, just the sound of rushing water and boots crunching on wet gravel. They wear simple gear, rubber boots, faded jeans, flannel shirts, and gloves caked in yesterday's silt. Their tools are handcrafted, passed down through families or built from local timber. The sieves are nothing more than wooden frames with a mesh bottom, but they're essential. By submerging them in the creek and shoveling in sediment, the miners can slowly shake out rocks and dirt, letting the heavier gold settle at the bottom. It's slow, repetitive work, but that's the point. This isn't about speed. It's about precision. The creek itself plays a vital role in this process. Its muddy waters carry gold particles that have eroded from surrounding hillsides over thousands of years. Unlike open-pit mines or industrial dredging operations, this method doesn't strip the land or disrupt ecosystems. Instead, it works in harmony with the natural flow of the stream. The miners choose shallow bends and gravel-rich patches where the current slows just enough to allow gold to drop and settle. These spots are scouted with years of experience and a deep understanding of how water moves earth. When the right place is found, the team forms a tight rotation, each person handling a different part of the workflow, from scooping and washing to sorting and weighing. Once the heavier materials are gathered, they move on to the critical part, separation. Using only a wide wooden pan and a practiced hand, the miner will gently swirl the sediment in water, allowing lighter debris to float away. What's left behind is black sand, garnets, and, if they're lucky, shimmering flakes of gold. The skill lies in knowing when to stop swirling. Too much movement, and the gold may be lost. Not enough, and the pan stays cluttered. This judgment takes years to refine, and some of the older miners can spot the shine of a gold flake even before it fully surfaces. These tiny fragments, often no bigger than a grain of rice, are carefully collected into glass vials and stored until the end of the day. But how does this translate into $1.9 million a month? The answer lies in volume and consistency. Each miner may only recover a few grams per session, but over dozens of workers and hundreds of man-hours each week, the total quickly adds up. On average, a single experienced miner can extract between 5 to 10 grams of gold per day, depending on the richness of the section they're working. Multiply that by 30 days and a crew of 20, and you begin to understand how the figures grow. What's even more surprising is how stable the yield remains. Thanks to the natural replenishment of the creek through seasonal rains and erosion, the gold keeps coming, year after year, season after season. Unlike industrial outfits that require constant reinvestment in equipment and fuel, these miners operate with minimal overhead. Their biggest expense is time. But time, in this case, is what builds their success. They understand the land intimately and know how to read its signs, where the water dips, where the sand thickens, where tree roots bend just enough to trap gold beneath them. They don't rely on luck, they rely on experience. And they're not alone. Buyers from nearby towns know exactly when to show up. As the sun dips below the trees, the day's findings are brought to a small wooden shack near the edge of the property. Inside, each miner pours their gold into a shared tray to be weighed, catalogued, and eventually divided or sold. Some choose to pool resources and sell in bulk, while others keep their findings private, saving for months until prices peak. The gold itself isn't always shiny or impressive at first glance. Much of it comes in dusty specks or small jagged nuggets mixed with quartz. But once cleaned and weighed, its value becomes obvious. A single vial containing just 2 ounces can fetch over $4,000 depending on purity and market demand. Collectors and jewelers from across the country track these miners, preferring their naturally extracted gold over chemically processed alternatives. It's not just about aesthetics, it's about origin. This gold carries a story, and that story adds value. Buyers are willing to pay more when they know it was pulled by hand from a quiet American creek, not blasted out of a pit halfway across the world. For the miners, however, it's not only about profit. Many speak of a connection to the land, a sense of pride in doing things the hard way. Some grew up watching their fathers and grandfathers pan the same waters, learning which trees to watch during floods, and how to feel gold with their fingertips before seeing it. This tradition has survived not because it's easy, but because it works, and because it represents a way of life that refuses to disappear. While other industries automate, digitize, and scale, these miners have chosen to stay close to nature, trusting wood, water, and instinct to lead them to wealth buried beneath the mud. As the weeks progress, the miners adapt to the creek's subtle changes. After a heavy rain, they adjust their strategy, knowing the rushing waters might have shifted gold deposits downstream. Rather than seeing the storm as a setback, they view it as an opportunity, nature's reset button. Certain bends in the creek suddenly reveal new gravel beds, and pools once dry now glisten with fresh sediment. They move like seasoned hunters, eyes sharp for glints of potential, hands steady from years of repetition. There are no electronic detectors or pumps, just muscle memory and deep respect for the creek's quiet voice. Even the youngest among them, often sons of miners in their early 20s, have learned how to detect the slight resistance a nugget gives against the wooden mesh when sifting. It's a trade where patience pays more than force. The surrounding community has quietly built itself around this hidden economy. Local supply shops stock only what the miners truly need: rubber boots, mesh, buckets, pans, and oil for lanterns. There's a quiet understanding between the workers and the townspeople. No contracts, no marketing, just trust. On market days, trucks come in with scales, sealed envelopes, and offers from out-of-state buyers. Some of the gold never makes it into banks. It changes hands on site, sometimes exchanged for tools, sometimes for supplies to keep the operation going. The cash flow may seem informal, but the bookkeeping is surprisingly strict. One miner acts as an unofficial accountant, tracking yields, market rates, and fair division for group efforts. Every speck of gold is accounted for, because every speck means food on tables, children in school, and roofs repaired before the next storm. Despite the rustic appearance, the work is highly technical in its own way. They don't call it guessing. They call it reading the ground. And reading means observing sediment color, water speed, gravel density, and the way a fallen branch might slow a current just enough to let gold settle underneath. Their wooden sieves are customized over time. Some have thicker mesh for larger nuggets, others finer for separating out heavy black sand where gold flakes hide. Panning is done with near surgical care. The swirling of water inside the pan is almost hypnotic, and watching a miner separate gold from worthless grains is like watching a craftsman trim stone, small, exact, and confident. The technique is passed through generations, but there's always room for innovation. Some miners have started adding clay grooves to their wooden pans, helping trap particles with more control. It's low-tech, but it works. The environmental impact, surprisingly, is minimal. Without chemicals, engines, or invasive drilling, the creek retains its natural state. The fish continue to swim, the banks remain stable, and the vegetation thrives. In fact, some of the older miners take it upon themselves to reinforce weak sections of the bank using rocks and logs, protecting the waterway that sustains their livelihood. There's a sense of stewardship rarely seen in extractive industries. Their philosophy is simple: if the creek is good to us, we'll be good to the creek. This has earned them respect even among environmental groups, some of which have quietly documented the site as a rare example of sustainable resource harvesting. A few biologists have even visited, amazed that so much value is being extracted without damaging the fragile ecosystem. The consistency of their success also lies in their discipline. There are no shortcuts. No one leaves early. No one skips steps. When fatigue sets in, they rest, but only enough to get back at it the next day. Injuries are rare, and when they happen, the team stops everything. Safety isn't treated as a regulation, it's a code. A twisted ankle, a deep cut, or even heat exhaustion leads to a collective pause. One man down affects them all. They don't have insurance or safety nets. What they have is each other. Medical supplies are kept dry in a box above the supply shack, and there's always someone with basic first aid training nearby. Most problems are solved with tape, clean water, and a few days of lighter duty. But they manage. Every so often, a discovery shocks even the veterans. A miner's pan will yield more than usual, not just flakes but a solid chunk, smooth on one side and rough on the other, tinged with quartz and black rock. These finds are rare, but not impossible. A nugget the size of a walnut can be worth over $15,000 on its own. The moment such a piece is found, the energy at the creek shifts. Work slows, everyone gathers around, and there's a shared respect for the miner's luck. The nugget is passed from hand to hand, not for approval, but for admiration. It's a quiet ceremony, without shouting or celebration, just nods and tight smiles. They understand what it means. It's not just a payday. It's proof that they were right to stay, right to dig, right to trust the ground beneath them. While most industries chase speed and scale, the miners of this creek continue to prove that persistence and simplicity can rival even the most modern machinery. Their monthly yield, nearly $2 million worth of raw gold, has drawn quiet interest from outside investors, curious journalists, and mining corporations. But when outsiders arrive, they often leave surprised or disappointed. There's nothing flashy here. No conveyor belts, no loud excavators, no teams in hard hats giving tours. The most sophisticated equipment is a weathered scale and a hand-notched ledger. For the miners, the allure isn't the spotlight, it's the solitude, the autonomy, and the unbroken link between effort and reward. They don't answer to shareholders or quarterly reports. Their profits don't come from leverage or speculation. They come from hours in cold water, from fingers cracked and stained with earth, from knowing that every glint in the pan is a direct result of their own labor. Some of the veterans remember when they were laughed at for sticking with the old ways. In the late 90s, when gold prices dipped and industrialization surged, many former colleagues sold off their claims or left in search of city jobs. Those who remained were called stubborn, even foolish. But now, as the price of gold has risen and environmental concerns dominate public discourse, this small operation has become something of a model. Universities have quietly requested permission to study their practices. Economic researchers are puzzled by how such low-tech methods yield such consistent results. Documentarians have offered money for footage. Yet most of these offers are politely declined. The miners are not guarding secrets, they're preserving peace. For them, exposure risks disruption. They fear what would happen if crowds flooded in, if machinery arrived, if someone tried to scale what was never meant to be scaled. Among the younger generation, there's a quiet pride in carrying on the tradition, but also a growing sense of responsibility. Many have taken it upon themselves to document the work digitally, not for clout, but for preservation. Small notebooks, GoPro footage, and even old tape recorders are used to create a living archive. They film their fathers teaching them how to read current lines, how to build a sieve that won't warp after a wet season, how to feel with a shovel where the gravel gets denser and heavier. These recordings are kept not for the internet, but for family. For the children not yet strong enough to work the creek. For the grandsons who one day might ask where the family's first home came from. For the daughters who might decide to return to the water one day, even if the world forgets how. The financial impact on the town is undeniable. Though small, the creek's gold supports several families, keeps local businesses alive, and funds repairs for roads and schools that would otherwise fall into disrepair. The town doesn't publish these numbers. There's no tourist brochure bragging about hidden fortunes. But within local circles, everyone knows which weeks are heavy, when more gold was pulled, when the creek gave more than expected. That's when hardware stores restock early, when restaurants stay open later, and when truck beds are fuller at the gas station. There's a rhythm to it all, unspoken but well understood. The gold doesn't just shape their economy, it shapes their seasons, their decisions, their pace of life. Regulations are minimal, but not absent. A regional inspector visits once a quarter, walking the banks and checking that the creek's flow hasn't been obstructed. He rarely finds a problem. In fact, he often finds improvements: hand-built retaining walls, rerouted runoff paths, and even hand-planted trees reinforcing the shoreline. The miners are protective of this land, not because it's theirs, but because it gives. Some have even organized cleanup days, where work stops and everyone walks the length of the creek to remove plastic, stray metal, or debris carried in by floods. There's no profit in it. No one is filming. But they do it anyway. Because the water has always done its part. Now it's their turn. One of the most remarkable aspects is the silence. Not just the lack of machines, but the quiet respect in the way they speak of their work. There are no exaggerated tales of overnight riches. No fantasy of striking it big. Their wealth doesn't come in jackpots, it comes in layers. A gram here, a flake there, a small nugget found between two roots. The miners understand that greed leads to recklessness, and recklessness breaks everything. That's why they take only what's ready to be taken, never digging too deep or too fast. It's why they rotate locations across the year, giving the creek time to reset. The gold will still be there. It has waited thousands of years. A few more months won't matter. As the sun sets, casting golden light over the creek's rippling surface, the miners return with their tools slung over shoulders. The day's gold is sealed in vials, labeled and locked away until it's weighed. The numbers don't need to be exact to make the effort worth it. Some days are heavier than others. Some days yield almost nothing. But the work is its own reward. The rhythm of the water, the thrill of a flicker of gold in black sand, the pride of carrying on a tradition older than memory, these things outweigh any market price. And so it continues. Quietly, deliberately, and with the same wooden tools that once seemed outdated but now prove timeless. In an era of automation and excess, this muddy little creek and the hands that shape its banks remind us that not all fortunes are loud. Some are whispered from the earth, pulled grain by those willing to listen.